Grossi Posse Packer Nation. Welcome to an episode of Packcast, the podcast where you don't have to be a Packers fan, but it sure does help. I'm your host, Tom Grossi, and do you feel it? Do you feel the tingles in the air and the goosebumps on your arms? Because there's only one thing that can make you feel like you've seen a ghost, and that's playing the Seattle Seahawks in the playoffs. And so, because of that, it's a little bit of old school reunion here, as we had this gentleman on in the very beginnings of Packcast when it was just audio and we were just a wee little baby. And now I still have PTSD from that day, and it still continues on to this day. But I am very happy to bring on Norbcam, a diehard Seattle Seahawks fan, to break down Sunday's game. Norb, thanks so much for coming on, man.
Hey, Tom. Thanks for having me. This is a fun reunion to be on your show with you. This is pretty cool.
Absolutely. And I gotta say right off the bat, I hope it ends differently from the last time our teams met in the playoffs, because I don't know if my blood pressure can really take another one of those losses, because, like, you know, there's some games that you just get over. Oh, it's a bad loss. It's problematic and you move on. But there's just some games with you guys that I have not gotten over.
Well, it's funny that you mentioned that, because that was probably the greatest game I've ever been to and probably ever will go to in terms of a come-from-behind miracle-type game. So at your expense, we had one of the best moments of, in my life as a Seahawks fan. But 2 weeks later, it would be overshadowed by one of the worst moments I'd ever had in my life. And so the best was hit the worst all in a period of 2 weeks. So, it's a bittersweet time in my life, because it was the coolest time and then it was one of the worst times. So, it wasn't all great. It didn't end with the happily ever after that season. There was a lot of misery after it. So if that makes you feel any better, we were more miserable than you probably 2 weeks after we felt like the best team in the world.
It does make me feel a little bit better. I'm not going to lie. Like, it did a little bit. And you know what? It's one of those things, too, that, like, teams that beat us in the NFC Championship game, besides the Giants, who then beat the Patriots, we don't talk about them. When we're talking about Aaron Rodgers, you beat us, and then you went and lost a heartbreaker in the Super Bowl. And then the Falcons beat us in the NFC Championship game, and then they lost a heartbreaker in the Super Bowl. So I'm just saying, don't beat up Aaron Rodgers in the NFC Championship game, or the Super Bowl's not going to end well for you guys. So, I mean, like, I'm just putting that out into the universe that it usually doesn't end well.
Well, it's funny you mentioned all those things that have happened, the coincidences, and the one common denominator is the one thing you didn't want to talk about. It's the Patriots, and we don't have to worry about the Patriots anymore this season. So they're out of the equation of that evil empire waiting in the wings. But it's funny. There's a lot of history between these two teams, and it's really kind of polar opposite. Just like you guys come to our city, and you guys can't seem to win. We go to your city, it's the same exact thing. So, we've got some hopefully turning of the tide of the history we've had, because we haven't won a game in Lambeau in like 2 decades. I mean, it's been a long time. So,
I mean, like,
obviously we have history going against us.
I mean, like, you want to bring Matt Hasselbeck out here. That'd be great. Like, just make him a team captain, just put him out there. That's fine. Like, I'm totally good with it. Cause, like, that's the thing though. Like, you guys, and I look at your team, and kind of what kind of season you had. I actually had you guys winning the division, and you came really, really close to winning that division. And, looking at kind of just like the injuries that you guys have sustained over the last final weeks of the season. And like, and people are saying like, oh, they're all beat up and, this, that. I'm like, I don't care. I don't care what they say. I don't care what anybody says. When the Seahawks are in the playoffs, like, you never know. Like, they're that one team that never goes away. Russell Wilson pulls something completely magical out of his ass, and the Packers cry for it. So I don't care what analysts are saying. I don't care what predictions are saying. All I know is that this is going to be one hell of a game on Sunday.
Yeah, you said it. It's a great matchup. I mean, I didn't expect it. I figured we were going to be going to San Francisco to face the Niners. Nobody gave the Vikings a chance to win that game against the Saints. I feel bad for Saints fans. I know, it's just, man, they can't catch a break.
Nope.
Whether it's them wanting us to win so that you guys wouldn't get the 2 seed, and instead they have to play, and then they end up getting a controversial call that keeps them from having a chance to move on in the playoffs. I mean, those fans have got to be, must be one of the most heartbroken fans, in the world. But, as it is, as fate turns out, we got past the Eagles again in controversial fashion with the clowny hit on Carson Wentz.
Yeah.
But, here we are facing you guys. But I think it's a pretty cool matchup. I like it, other than the fact that we're playing you in Lambeau. These two teams are they're kind of on a collision course because besides our history, I feel like it's probably the two teams that maybe people probably look at as, besides the Vikings, as probably the more flawed teams in here. Everyone's giving major love to the 49ers as kind of the team of destiny this year. So they've got everything, to lose because right now it's their Super Bowl, to lose, at the hands of your team or mine. But as far as us going against each other, it's kind of like our teams are both had their rocky moments. We both had our crap games where we looked like garbage, when we're playing really well and all of a sudden a really bad game that just was like, what team showed up today, And, you guys kind of, in that final game that you had to win against Detroit, it looked like for a while there you guys weren't going to get it. But, you mentioned Russell Wilson pulling it out of his ass at the end of the game. So, Aaron Rodgers kind of has a similar kind of habit of, when they got to get that win, he finds a way to make it happen too. So, I feel like these are very similar teams. We've had so many games against each other that have been so down to the wire. And I don't expect anything less in terms of drama this Sunday.
Yeah, so. And I think what's crazy too is like you look at kind of like how this season has gone, and you're right next to it, right? You mentioned the 49ers and kind of already saying like, the analysts and everybody are already crowning the 49ers as the winners of the NFC, and they're already punching their Super Bowl ticket. And I gotta say, when the Niners were going on their run and being undefeated for as long as they were, I was a doubter. Like I 100% was. And I was looking at them and I was like, nah, they're not really playing good teams. Then they beat the Rams when we all thought the Rams were still good. And we were like, okay, maybe they're a little bit better. And then they started like putting the beat down. Then they destroyed us. And I was like, oh, okay, well now I can't say anything. And like, I'm curious of just getting your take on it because like, while the 49ers are obviously one of the best teams in football, they've also had their ugly losses too, right? Like the Falcons game was like, that was terrible, and people also, they're saying, oh, it's the weather, but like they only beat the Redskins by 9 points. Like there's points within their season where there's like some question marks, or like even the Saints game where obviously they came back and won that game, but their defense just gave up and was like, nah, we're not going to play defense today. So I'm curious about what your take on the 49ers is, being that you're in the same division. You guys have nail-biter games twice already this season. And with the potential, if you beat the Packers, it's pretty likely that you're going to be going over to San Francisco again. Do you see this as a team that is like that powerhouse, or do you see them as like they're good, but like they're not as great as either their record indicates or that everyone is crowning them to be?
Well, to be honest, they are a good team. I like what Shanahan has done with their offense. They're a fun offense to watch. Sometimes, when we were playing them, I'm watching their offense with all this misdirection and movement and stuff, and I see ours just like very straight up. It's like, man, why can't we do some fun stuff like that? A little bit of creativity just to move things around. So they've definitely done a lot of great things, and they've drafted well. So now all those draft picks are starting to pay off. They're loaded with talent, and we've all had injuries. We aside from Philadelphia, Seattle might be one of the worst banged up teams out there. But the 49ers were banged up for a while. We benefited from our win over them when George Kittle was out, and we knocked out a couple of their guys in the middle of that game too. But now they have had the bye. They've got a couple more of their defense, stars coming back. Potentially, I think Quan Alexander and Dee Ford might be coming back for the playoffs. So, an already good team who were missing some pieces are now potentially coming back. So that already pretty loaded stack team has got a couple more pieces coming to it. So, they definitely have some advantages to them. To an already strong team. So. Yeah, but we, even when I think as expected, they were going to run all over, just destroy us. And it looked like they might early in that game, that final game of the season. We came back and were able to move the ball on them and make it into a game where we really should have won that game if a couple of things go our direction. Sure. Pass interference. Yep. But, it's just, it didn't quite go. We missed it by a couple inches, but had we won that, the whole thing changes entirely.
Oh,
you guys don't get the 2 seed. They drop to the 5 seed. We host a game and we still won, the first round. So we got past that anyway. But, So it's just, so we know we can hang with them, but they're definitely in a prime spot right now, having had the bye and getting some players back. So yeah, they definitely scare me. They're a tougher team in the NFC for sure.
Well, that's the thing too. Like it's one of these like weird Twilight Zone episodes that I'm in, because like I find myself actually rooting for the Vikings this weekend, because I'm like, I don't want to go back there. Like, because if we wind up getting past you guys, then, the Vikings win, then we have the NFC Championship game in Lambeau, so like that's literally like the best case scenario. And, looking at this, like before when we all thought the Saints were going to win, I wanted you guys to win because I thought that you guys had the best chance to go knock out the 49ers at home, and then we could get you for the NFC Championship game. And then maybe I'm talking to you a week later. But like you said, like that, even that final game, with that final week changes everything and just changes the seedings completely. And so, now we have what we have in front of us. And I want to kind of get your take on last week's game against the Eagles, right? And which you mentioned this before, two very beat up teams. There was a little bit of that controversy going on with Clowney's hit on Wentz, and the league it seems that they're really not going to do anything about it. I'm curious, just like as from a Seahawks perspective, do you think it was like a dirty hit? And then going beyond that, kind of what were your thoughts after watching that game, and battling it out with Josh McCown?
Sure. Well, I went on my YouTube channel, Norbcam. I spent a whole video just talking about that controversial hit because I was just so tired of so many, haters, particularly in Philadelphia, just wanting to, kill Jadeveon Clowney for what he did to, like a death sentence on him.
Sure.
For doing what he did. I just thought, man, this is a little over the top. I understand you're upset. You blame him for basically making that game, the reason why they lost. But going back to, just for the record, I don't think it was a dirty play. I think yes, it was a helmet to helmet hit. I think a penalty would have been in order, and it probably will get a fine for it. I just don't think he'll get anything worse than that, a suspension, or because he's not a player, who historically has done dirty plays.
Yeah.
If it was Vontaze Burfict, he would have been not taken out of the game in a heartbeat. But that's not really his style. And I look at it in real time. We all watched the game, and it didn't even look like anything unusual. It kind of just looked like, he went down and he kind of hit him on top. It wasn't until you watch slow-mo and then you see all the medical stuff he started going through. Then they investigated it more, and everybody's like, "Oh my gosh, look what he did to him!" But in normal speed, it just looks like kind of what you would do when you're chasing the guy down. And and I mentioned this, the fact that Carson Wentz, and this is kind of a warning to the Lamar Jacksons of the world, which is you guys got to protect yourselves, because it takes just one play like that to knock you out. And if Lamar Jackson gets knocked out of a game, goodbye Super Bowl. So he's got to. He's not Superman, and he's got to protect himself. And that's one thing I credit Russell Wilson for doing, because sometimes he'll slide early, and it's like, oh, man, you could have gotten 6 or 7 yards, but you slid and only got 2 or 3. But I'm thinking, I'd rather him give up the 3-4 yards and play the rest of the game than dive for 2 and get knocked out or take some weird hit on the knee or something, because you lose all the protection. So anyway, that's just my take. I don't think it was that play. Biased or not biased, I just don't, looking at it real time, it didn't look like a dirty hit. But going to the game itself, consequently, of course, him not being in the game definitely, helped change the direction of the Eagles' ability to have any chance of coming back, since they were missing so many weapons already. But the thing is, even when he was in, he didn't do much. He had like 4 yards passing or something. And they actually started doing better when the backup came in. And that often happens, you game play for a certain quarterback, and then all of a sudden the new guy comes in and everything changes.
Sure.
So sometimes you're not prepared for what the backup's going to do, because the game plan goes out the door and they start doing different things. And, he actually moved the ball pretty well, whether that be concerning of, is our defense that bad to be giving up so many yards to a 40-year-old backup who hasn't played in how many months? Or is that just sort of, sometimes the backup can be the next best thing when you need to change things up? But really in that game, to me, it was Seattle just, it's been the formula all year. Seattle probably could have tried to put more points on there, and they left some points on the board with a blocked field goal and a couple of drives that got stalled. Otherwise, they probably would have been up a couple more scores. But Seattle just, I don't know if they like to, or it's just their strategy, but they just keep things close. It makes this heart attacks, for us as fans, but I think they just kind of play that, get enough of a lead and just play the clock and, run the ball and don't take too many risks throwing the ball, down the field unnecessarily. So instead of getting a huge, margin up on teams, they just do enough to try to, stay ahead. And that's why I feel like, it's always going to be a close game. Our point differential all year is, I think it's less than 20 points total. So we've beaten every team by barely a score, I think, and when it averages out. So, with the Eagles, we didn't run the ball very well, but I think that was their plan. Was they knew they could try to stop the run and force us to throw, and we knew that we could throw against their secondary, which is not that strong. So, we kind of just played to their, our strengths to their weakness, and Russell Wilson was able to throw the ball well, and that's what won us the game. So, that's I think the game plan will be a little different because you guys, your defense is different from what Philadelphia threw at us, and I think your run defense is less, and I think Seattle may try to work that a little bit more, but it'll be interesting to see if our run game period is no longer the same since our backfield got completely decimated, and so now we're playing with a backup and a couple of guys you may remember from the past.
Yeah, exactly. You just make it so much worse. There's just like, oh man, you remember that game? Oh, well, we're gonna bring back the stars from that game too. Like I'm surprised Doug Baldwin's not coming back.
It is fun to think though that we had that game 5 years ago or whatever, 4 years ago. No, it's 5 years ago. 5 years ago, and I never thought in my wildest dreams we'd ever see Marshawn Lynch in a uniform. I thought maybe if he gets accepted to like the Seattle Seahawks Ring of Honor, we'll see him back in Seattle. But to see him in a uniform again, especially when we saw his debut against the 49ers as a fan, it was like out of this body experience.
Sure.
Hard to believe you're seeing what you're seeing. And then to see him score a touchdown in the 2 games he's played was great because we loved Beast Mode, man. He was such a big part of the spirit and the identity of this team. So while he's not the same guy he was 5 years ago, he's still got some gas left in the tank. So it's fun to see what he'll be able to do. Even if it's just for 2 or 3 yards, every yard he gets is something that usually is exciting to watch. So we'll see what he can do against you guys.
And I saw too, like the week he came back against the 49ers, the guy who actually stuck out to me was Homer. Like that guy, like he was elusive. Like he was picking up a good chunk of yards, and he seemed to be a playmaker, which was pretty damn impressive considering, like you said, your backfield got completely and totally decimated. And, Lynch coming back, like, it looked like slow and lethargic in the beginning, and then he started ramping it up a little bit. And that TD run that he did have against the Eagles, like, that looked a little bit more like old-time beast mode. And all I'm thinking in the back of my head, I was like, son of a bitch. I'm like, he's going to be like, oh, no, I'm back just for this game only against the Packers. And I'm already starting to, like, just see it. And I'm like, please no. But one of the things that sticks out to me is you mentioned our run defense. And we've had our struggles definitely over this season, but our pass rush has been kind of one of the highlights. And it was Darius Smith, Preston Smith, even Kenny Clark getting it on it, or Dean Lowry. But the Smith brothers really have just been kind of like tearing it up and have been like the best tandem pass rush in the league. And I'm asking you kind of just based off of all the injuries that you have, the O-line, which has never really been a point of strength with the Seahawks, which I also think attributes to why Russell Wilson slides a lot. He's like, I've been hit too many times over the years. Like, I know when to slide. I know when to go down. I'm curious of how you think with all those injuries and how you think your offensive line is going to be able to handle that pass rush.
Well, we're all still up in the air on pins and needles, wondering what our line's going to look like. Because basically our left side of the line is, our left guard is Mike Iupati and Dwayne Brown. And those guys are still questionable as to whether they're going to play. They didn't play last week. Iupati's got a neck thing, and Dwayne Brown came off of some knee surgery thing that he had to get something cleaned up on. So he's been dealing with stuff all season long. So different those guys are in there. Obviously, Dwayne Brown, left tackle, the most important lineman position. Him not being there changes the entire scope of what they want to do. So, we're already banged up. We lost our center games ago. We've been with a backup center, Joey Hunt. He's a little guy. I don't know if you've seen him, but he doesn't look like he belongs out there. He's this tiny dude. Because Justin Britt is a beast of a man, and he's been a great rock to our line. While the other pieces have moved around, he's been like the one solid we can count on. And when he went down, it was like, oh crap, our season might have just gone down the tube. And then little Joey Hunt came in and was like, wow, this guy's actually holding his own. But he definitely, there are times when he gets bowled over. Fletcher Cox was having his way with him, and it makes it tough because running the ball is tough when you can't get that interior push. Pass blocking's tough when up the middle you feel like they can just go right up the center and get right into Russell's face. So we're basically missing right now 3/5 of our line in the most important side, and we don't know if two of those guys are going to be playing or not. If they play, it's going to be great, but if not, we're going to have to fly with what we had. And last week we didn't run the ball particularly well, and luckily we didn't get sacked a lot. But I think the key to that, and I think the key to any team's success, is pass rush. For us to have success, we got to get pressure on you guys too. So
Sure.
Everyone's trying to rush the quarterback. So we're going to have to, if we can't stop the rush from the guys you mentioned, the Smith brothers, and if we can't keep them from coming down on Wilson, I hope they have some plans to roll them out, get into space, and things like that. Because otherwise, it's going to be a long day. So that's to be seen.
And I think one of the obviously the top stories coming out of last week's game was DK Metcalf, like literally just like emerging and just being like, oh, hey, like I'm DK Metcalf. And obviously there was a lot of buzz coming off of him, from the draft. And I did a whole piece on him and talking about kind of like what he was able to do. He put up all those numbers in college, but like a lot of the criticisms was that he was like kind of just like a go route kind of guy, wasn't really good with the route running. And I think what you saw this past Sunday was kind of like proving a lot of those, criticisms to be at least saying that he's improved upon them. And I think that, you pair him with a guy like Tyler Lockett, who usually is the main focal point when it comes to guarding your receivers, that's a pretty damn dangerous duo if you can get DK Metcalf like really up and running. And so while I'm sitting here thinking like, okay, got to stop the run, what have you, then you also have like this elusive passing game, not only with your quarterback, but also with these dynamic receivers kind of like going with it as well. And so, even if you guys are able to kind of like win out on offense, looking at the defensive side of the ball, you are experiencing some injuries there, but where do you see kind of like going to be like the biggest issues? Because the Packers offense this year has been hot and cold, but mostly like lukewarm. They've been whatever. And, whether it's, having Aaron Jones being like a main focal point there, or Devontae Adams picking up a bunch of the slack, or Rodgers deciding to show up, at points, kind of like where do you see the biggest challenges for the Seahawks when trying to contend with Aaron Rodgers in that offense?
Right. Well, let me start on just a little bit on the DK Metcalf point you brought up earlier. DK Metcalf has been, I think he's had a great season so far. And, the last game I'd say that was kind of his breakout game. He kind of waited to the end of the season to have a true breakout where everybody could see what he could do. He's one of those guys where he's made so many great plays, but they've been overshadowed by a lot of big mistakes in certain games. In the 49er game, he had this amazing kind of catch and run where he almost got into the end zone, but instead he fumbled it and basically gave the 49ers the ball at the goal line. And essentially, instead of a touchdown on an amazing catch and run, it became a turnover that nobody gets to hear about. It was a great play that never became.
Sure.
And he's had a couple other ones where he's had some weird turnovers, some weird drops. And so I always saw his potential, throughout the season, like, if he just caught that ball, if he just got it, we used his body to catch that one, this would have been a great game for him. So it's been almost there, but just not quite. Well, last week's game was he finally got it. He kind of put a bunch of stuff together and came in huge. So hopefully this is one of those things where it's not 2 steps forward or 1 step forward, 2 steps back. But if he can keep building on that and him and Russ keep developing the connection, I think he will definitely cause problems for teams because he hasn't really been that huge of a factor consistently. And I think part of that too was, as you mentioned, Tyler Lockett. He had a rough, like halfway through the season to about the 3/4 mark, he was kind of, neutralized both by injury and then the flu and then coming back from the injury. But 3-4 games, he was kind of a non-factor. And with those guys healthy now, that gives Russell twice as many effective options, whereas before it was kind of like his fourth-string tight end was his favorite target for a while there because he couldn't really utilize both of the outsides. But now that his outsides are healthy, they're starting to come into more of a regular factor. And now I think he can look to it more consistently than before. He had to kind of rely on the tight ends for the tight end because they weren't out there, as a consistent option. So now that they're both, knock on wood, both healthy right now, I think it's a great time that's all coming together because they haven't really had that all season. So, but as far as the other side, looking at you guys, what scares me the most, I'm sure for every team watching the Packers offense is, you're that running back. We've got to stop him. I mean, Aaron Jones seems like he's the guy that, much like a lot of teams who have that great running back that makes everything else happen. For us, it was like our running back.
Yeah.
Chris Carson was tearing it up, and we were letting the run set up the pass. Well, that's kind of no longer the case. And that's why I think Wilson's got to put the game on his shoulders. But for stopping you guys, I feel like the pressure's been off of Rodgers because you've been able to kind of run things through your running back. And so much like the Vikings need Dalvin Cook.
Very much so.
I think we've got to stop him. I think if we can neutralize or just not let him get some of those huge explosive runs that he's capable of doing and passes coming out of the backfield, if we can keep him at bay, I know we can't shut him down, but at least not let him go wild to where he's just, 100 plus yards rushing and, multiple receptions downfield. If we can prevent that kind of thing and keep it to where he's just sort of a nominal factor, then I think our chances of winning the game go up gently if we can stop him or neutralize him.
Yeah, and I think, it is going to be one of those games where I feel like it's going to be like this chess match of, okay, we have to stop this guy, but then this guy can get out. You know what I mean? There are playmakers for both of our teams, so it's going to be interesting to see. And you mentioned this, really at the top of the show, talking about the teams are flawed, right? They do have their flaws. This is the Seahawks, one of the most glaring ones now is just the fact that the guys aren't healthy at this point, and teams could take advantage of that. And with the Packers, it's just been a lackluster offense that you really haven't seen explode this year. And so kind of coming down to trying to predict how this game is going to go, do you see, we mentioned Lambeau before and the whole home field advantage and what have you. Do you think that there's a good chance that the Seahawks walk away victorious here? Or do you think this is going to be a fight? This is going to be a challenge?
Well, I think it's going to be a fight. It's going to be a challenge, and I don't think the decision, the winner will be determined until the final 2 minutes of the game. That's just because I've been watching it all season long.
Yeah.
And, the Packers have had their share of games like that too.
Oh,
so
plenty.
I feel like, of course, as a fan, I've got to say that I'm optimistic that Seattle will somehow defy the odds and get a win in a place that we haven't won in over 20 years.
Sure.
But I think it's just because we match up well. And, I know it's going to be likely snowing. Everything that Lambeau is famous for, it's probably going to be, the elements will be flowing at both teams. And you guys are used to it more than our team is. But, I guess I'm just hopeful that we'll do just enough to get by. And maybe there's a final game-winning field goal or final play, that gets it done. But I expect to have no fingernails left by the time it's all finished. And I expect to be behind at some point. Usually it's right off the bat. Inevitably we fall behind in 3-0, 7-0 to start the game. And I wouldn't be surprised if it goes that way just to start. But usually the second half is when things start to, turn our way. So, I don't expect it to be any different, but I expect a low, if the weather is going to be what everyone's predicting, I'm expecting a game that's going to be in the 20s. I'd be surprised if we got over 30 points in this game for either team. But, something like a 28-27 or a 24-21.
Yeah.
Something of that nature is what I'm guessing.
I'm just I don't know if I can take overtime. I just don't know if my body can physically handle going into overtime. Cause I'm sitting there and I'm watching all these wild card games go down to the last second or go into OT. And I'm just no. Cause I feel like our game I think it has the potential to be the best game of the weekend. I think that the Vikings 49ers game, it could, I think there's a decent chance that, the 49ers could run away with it. Depends on what Vikings defense shows up and, if the Dalvin Cook is able to run all over them. But like you look at some of like these, like the Chiefs Texans, I don't know how much of a game that's going to be. Like I feel like the Packers Seahawks, like it's already like commanding so much attention that it's like this is going to be the game to watch on Sunday.
I agree. I think so. I think they were wise to make this the final game of the weekend. But the earlier one too, between the Ravens and Titans, that's an intriguing one too, because
it is.
If the Titans can. Well, really, you mentioned before, they're both rooting for the Vikings for obvious reasons.
Yeah.
if the Vikings could knock off the Goliath of the NFL right now,
and we're good. We're good.
Well, for one, it means that if we win, we get to host the NFC Championship. I don't think that's ever happened. I don't think five's ever hosted six in the NFC playoffs, right, or in the playoffs ever. So that would be history in the making. That'd be incredible because I don't think anyone ever would have thought that could happen. But that's so that for that we're already obviously rooting for the Vikings to pull some kind of miracle off over there. But the Ravens Titans, I think the Ravens have been the darling pick of the AFC for a while now, of course, with Lamar Jackson doing his thing. But the Titans, they've been quietly just banging guys down like a bowling ball, just plowing through people and watching them, just dismantle the Patriots. The Patriots knew exactly what they were going to do, and they still couldn't stop it. So there's no real secret to it. It's like, here we are, we're rolling down the field.
Here's Derrick Henry. He's going to run all over you. And
hey, let's see if you can do something about it. There's no surprise. It's like, we're going to throw the ball minimally, and we're going to run it down your throat. See if you can do something about it.
Yeah,
so,
it's interesting. They're such a fascinating team because like I was watching some of their games, or at least like like bits and pieces of it, like against the Saints or like against the Texans, in which they lost. Like, and I was like, oh man, like they're one of those teams that looks like they're right there, but like they're not just there yet. But I mean, like, listen, my hat's off to them. They're able to go into Foxborough and knock off Tom Brady. Regardless of how weak that team has been, it's still the New England Patriots, and I think that they shut up a lot of people, and also got the praise from a lot of people for knocking them out, because we're actually going to see some variety in the Super Bowl for once, which will be definitely a nice welcome experience.
A nice, refreshing change of pace for sure.
Definitely.
But I think that's what's been great about this season. Just there have been so many times when every great team has had, I think, a bad game.
Yes.
The 49ers losing to the Falcons unexpectedly, the Patriots Dolphins, and then getting knocked out early. The Ravens losing to the Cleveland Browns. But I'm still, when I look back, it's like, how the heck did that happen?
Chubb ran all over them. Yeah, that was bad.
Early, it was just early on the season. They didn't have their, everything quite aligned yet. But so I think every team on a certain day can get beat. There's no indestructible team. So, but I do like our matchup. I just think it's cool with two Super Bowl quarterbacks. The history that's between our two teams. They're gonna be flashing back all kinds of highlights of the past games that we've had.
Of course.
But it's a great. It goes back a long ways. I mean, like you said, the Hasselbeck. We want the ball. We're going to score. They should. He could be down there just doing the coin toss.
That's fine with me. That's great. I'll take it. Like I'm all good. Just don't get Golden Tate out there, because then like it's just like all the bad blood's gonna come back, and it's just like literally just like have them all lined up and just be like, here you go. Here is the misery of all of your past games together, and just in one wonderful package. But Norb, it's an absolute pleasure talking to you. I really appreciate you coming on the show. Tell all the peoples where they can find the YouTube channel, where they can find you all on the social media, and all of those extracurricular things.
Oh, for sure. It's real easy. Instagram, Twitter, and YouTube. Just look up Norbcam, Norbcam, and you'll find me. And I'm just like you, man. Big fan of my team. I have a lot of fun with reactions to games, talking about the Hawks. I do music videos, comedy sketches, the whole nine. So I love what you're doing, and I congratulate you too on your success, since we both kind of got into this biz around the same time. So it's fun that we should be meeting like this, because I'm real happy for you and all the watching your channel grow these past few years. It's pretty cool.
Yeah, very much appreciate it, man. And here's the thing. The worst case scenario that I could possibly imagine is the Vikings and the Seahawks, because the Vikings are just, and then the Seahawks with all our history together, like that would be my worst nightmare of an NFC championship game. So if you do wind up winning, I don't know if I would pull for anybody if it was against the Vikings. Like, it might just be I sit and cry for 3.5 hours during that game. But if the 49ers wind up winning, I just hope that you guys have another awesome freaking game, because whenever you guys seem to meet up, there's just fireworks between the 49ers and Seahawks.
It's great to have that rivalry back alive again. I really don't want to face them, but at the same time, it would be a great matchup. But we got to get past this one first. So it's gonna be fun watching this. And if it's a snow game, I love snow games. I know it sometimes makes it to where it messes things up, but I love to watch snow games just because you don't see them very often.
It's football season, baby.
Ever in them. Yeah. Well, we might have to do another collab after this game.
There you
Talk
go.
about how we're feeling when it's all said and done. But this was fun, man. I appreciate it, and good luck, sort of, on Sunday.
Yeah, exactly. And so, once again, we take the battlefield to take on the Sea Chickens one more time. I'm going to need so much alcohol. But let us know what you think down in the comments below about this upcoming game. You can always find me at TomGrossiComedy.com or at TomGrossiComedy on all social media. See down below. Check out podcasts on SoundCloud, iTunes, Google Play Music, Spotify, and of course YouTube. And a big shout and thank you to all the Patreon members over at patreon.com/TomGrossiComedy. But I am Tom Grossi. Thank you so much for watching. And as always, go Bag Go.